All right, everyone, the stock market is hitting new highs never before believed possible, as some people say it's a bubble. Some people say, well, we had a foreshock where there's an impending depression. I don't see that on the immediate horizon. I'm optimistic about the U.S. economy because Trump is the president. I'd be less optimistic if a Democrat were to take over. By the way, this is going to play a disproportionate role in the 2020 election that the Democrats are fully aware of. They can't campaign on money. They can't campaign on the economy. So right now, what are they doing? The next best thing. They're talking about Trump's taxes again. Just like they did in the last election. And it's not going to go anywhere. It doesn't matter. Eventually, Trump will just fucking disclose his taxes to you and rub it in your faces anyway, Democrats. That's probably what will end up happening before the election takes place. And it's going to be pretty funny. And then they'll probably default to him being sexist or a Russian asset or some other lie that they've made up. And a lot of it is flat out lying. At most of it's half-truths. That's just the name of the game. They don't have a platform because they can't run against Trump on anything. None of the Democrats currently in the field can argue that Trump has done particularly poorly on foreign policy or that they would do better. You know, getting Baghdadi, largely crippling ISIS worldwide, North Korea shenanigans aside, generally speaking, he's done a pretty good job. Trade deals in the economy, he's done a very good job. There's nothing to complain about. I remember when they laughed heartily about stopping Trump from building his wall. Now that his wall's being built, they're pretending that it's a big problem, that power tools that most Mexican drug lords aren't going to bother investing in can cut through it, as though the barriers aren't based on barriers that have already been built and largely effective in the past. Yeah, people cut holes in your wall. You fucking repair them. Unfortunately, it's impossible to nab every person that crosses your border. But at the very least, there's a border barrier there. And if you've got two walls in a row, it makes it even harder, which is actually what he's considering building. Just give him $5 extra billion. He'll get it accomplished. Don't worry about it too much. So the Dow Jones and the stock market in general are now at new highs. It's funny because all of a sudden all of these same liberals started talking about how it was Obama's economy again. But when the stock market shudders, if it has an off day, they say there's the Trump economy kicking in. You don't even, again, I'm not a Trump superfan, I'm not a Republican, and I'm certainly not a conservative, and yet I'm looking at the situation. It is completely dishonest how it's being spoken of by the corporate media and by the Democrats. They are being dishonest. The same person will literally switch from it's the Obama economy to the Trump economy if it has an off day. Right now, I guess it's rising, so it's the Obama economy again. How many years is Obama going to get in office? I thought that we kicked presidents out after the second term because we had term limits. Apparently, he's on his third term. And that magic wand that Trump waved did a good job as far as GDP growth. It's funny that the GDP's growth goes down a little bit to the normal level it was at under the good moments under Obama, and all of a sudden everybody freaks out, the Trump economy will come crashing down. I don't see it happening. I'm pretty optimistic, at least for the next few years, I would say. Or they'll say, and this is technically true, the stock market doesn't represent Main Street, it represents Wall Street. Well, yes, but there is an element of interchange between the two. That's definitely a perfectly appropriate way to deflect a good stock market. Well, that doesn't mean that the average Joe American got much benefit. Okay, the opposite, though, is catastrophic. If the Dow Jones is reaching new lows and crumbling to the ground, it's usually an indicator you got some fucking problems going on. That's what Paul Krugman thought would happen. Supposedly, according to the best analysis of the far-left economists of the Obama era, supposedly we should be in the next Great Depression right now. The U.S. should have 15-20% unemployment. We should have bread lines and shit. It should look like Bernie Sanders is the president. We don't have that. Instead, business is largely booming. Things are going well throughout most of the United States. Of course there are hiccups. There are days and weeks the Dow Jones falls by 100 or 1,000 points. Businesses go belly up. You have temporary spikes in unemployment. You have all sorts of problems. And guess what people are going to notice, though? The worst possibilities under Trump, if you look at the worst periods of growth and unemployment under him versus what the Democrats are offering as an alternative, there's no comparison. What are they offering us? Biden's offering, let's return to Obama. So mediocre growth, largely for low-wage jobs. Reenact all the regulations and the high tax systems that kept U.S. businesses from growing properly so that foreign businesses would have to come in to compete in order to fill the gap. Okay, wonderful. Elizabeth Warren, under her medical plan alone, just her healthcare overhaul plan, over 1 million people may lose their jobs in the United States. I was using the conservative estimate the other day, by the way. I was saying 600, 700,000. That's a conservative estimate. The liberal estimate's 1.6 million. 1.6 million people in our workforce might lose their jobs if Elizabeth Warren is elected. Not to mention that the cost would be so astronomical that number would be far higher when businesses can't possibly pay the fees for workers' health care. Oh, but the government will handle it instead. They say, okay, what'll the business tax be like? What will you raise it to? I guarantee it'll be higher than it was under Obama. We don't have any businesses in the United States. Who the hell can afford it? The United States staggers along despite overwhelming odds, primarily because of Trump's restructuring of the tax system. I wish he'd give another round of tax cuts. Bernie Sanders? Oh yeah, we'll raise the business tax rate 3 or 4 points. Personal income tax might be upwards of 90% for the upper income earners. Wow, how wonderful. I'm sure that they won't take their wealth and fucking leave the country. Most of their wealth is multinational anyway. If I'm Mark Zuckerberg, I can base Facebook in another country. Yeah, I can go to Thailand. They're not going to give me any problems. You know how long they would suck him off if he did? If Google were to say, well, we'll move our headquarters out of California, we can't deal with it. State taxes, federal taxes, we can't pay the fees. They're going to come for us. What would end up happening is the Democrats would have to throw in so many loopholes that once again the big corporations and CEOs would pay nothing extra. All of the additional burden would be on the upper middle class, the productive rich like doctors and lawyers, and small businesses and entrepreneurs and farmers, the exact group of people that are already shoved aside under every tax plan imaginable except Donald Trump's. Even the Republicans are just a sad mockery of fiscal conservatism when it comes to protecting small businesses, entrepreneurs, and farmers especially, let alone the wider working through upper middle class, the core of your economy at large. No, they just want cheap shit from China too, all the neocons. Trump's the only one who's shown any fiscal sense whose name isn't Rand Paul. So, by the way, I would have supported Rand Paul for president. I will hope that he runs after Trump's gone. I hope Trump endorses him. That'd be a good time. Let's get a little bit of quasi-libertarianism going, see how low we can get the tax code. No, the stock market's at record highs, but Krugman and all, they said it would be terrible. Now, some people are saying, well, the U.S. debt keeps climbing. The deficit is hitting record highs. Yeah, debt and deficit, big problem. By the way, there are ways to construe the debt and deficit as irrelevant. I don't take up that line. I realize that most of our debt is held domestically. The idea that China is even the majority foreign holder of it is wrong. It's something like 18 or 19%. I think Japan has the most of it. Japan has most of the U.S. debt that's not held domestically, and I think more than half of it's domestic. So that number is misleading. It is problematic. Republicans, by the way, are lying through their teeth when they say they're not concerned about that, just as Democrats did for all 8 years of Obama. But it's not so large that it can't be dealt with, and unfortunately is unnecessary at the moment. Trump had to stimulate economic growth. He did it. It has worked. It's morning in America again. This is beginning to look a lot like we're headed into 1983 or 84. That's a lot of what it looks like. Trump is beginning to look more like Reagan every single day. Now, that's both for good and bad. I'm not a huge Reagan fan, but it's a far sight better than what we've suffered through since then. Herbert Walker, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama. 4 losers in a row. It's surprising that we even survived as a country this long. Thank goodness Trump is returning us to some degree of at least 80s-style economic sense. I think we need to go way further. I think he's a mild reformer. That's exactly what I said Trump would be when he was campaigning. He hadn't even been nominated yet. If he elected, he would be a mild reformer. He would tackle the border issue. He is. But he's not kicking millions of people out of the country. He would restructure the tax code, but he wouldn't be slashing and burning things back to the 1800s, and he hasn't. He would be good for the economy, but people who said he'd be the God Emperor, we'd be at like 10% GDP growth, were crazy. Have I not been correct on pretty much every marker of what Trump's presidency would look like? It's very funny that some of the Groyper people would find that problematic. I think it's wonderful. Things are looking up. Look, you got to get a little bit of optimism, defeat the black pilling. If you want change, you're not going to get it with the Democrats, unless you want accelerationism because you're completely insane and ignoring all of human history. It's very funny. By the way, I do believe that that's a left-wing op. I don't believe that that's organically right-wing in any capacity. No, I don't believe that a bunch of social conservatives got together and decided that that would be a good idea. No, I think that leftists decided it'd be a good way to get some of Trump's more vocal proponents online to abandon him in favor of Yang Gang meme campaign or Tulsi Gabbard or something. Yeah, Trump's doing pretty well. On the economy, I would give him a B plus or an A minus probably. A little bit lower on foreign policy and certainly mediocre on domestic policy. There are certainly some gaps in what he's doing. Some of his proposals, the bump stock ban was a distraction, for example. His initial belief on CIA black sites was terrible. I wish he would do more swamp draining and fixate on, some of the Clintonian bullshit going on. But again, I can also honestly admit he's being hamstrung by a government that has been deliberately set up at this point to prevent him from reforming things. They don't want him to succeed too much because they're terrified. Some of these people, I'll even give them the benefit of the doubt. I think that they think that Trump really is a foreign asset because they're just asinine and don't know what the hell they're talking about. And so they're trying to prevent him from being too popular because they think he'll become some sort of dictator. Most of these people, though, are just slimy. They want multinationalism. They want globalism. They're not really, they don't believe in America first. They believe in the whole world is the same and we're all God's children. Let's hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Well, that's not what the U.S. government is set up to do. The U.S. government should prefer U.S. citizens and residents. The U.S. government should hammer other countries over the head if necessary on behalf of the U.S. population. Whatever is best for the United States citizenry is what the U.S. government is paid to do. They are paid to represent U.S. interests, not global interests. Unfortunately, for 4 subsequent political incarnations in the executive branch, that was ignored. The last president who primarily favored U.S. policy was Reagan, who primarily favored it, and even he ultimately was a globalist. You literally have to go back to the 60s to find anyone who actually truly represented U.S. first interests. By the way, U.S. first, I'm not using that in the ethno-nationalistic context of the Groyper thing. No, I'm using it it's America first. Government should represent the people of the United States. What about that is so hard to understand? And how the hell does that have anything to do with bigotry or extremism? If you think that it's extreme to suggest that a government should primarily represent its own citizenry, I think you're nuts. You've lost it somewhere. That's about all. Peace out.